What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Love Raven. If you are new here, what's up? Welcome to the community. I also have in this channel a safe space for faith, which is just a community where we are diving deep into God's word so that we can find practical ways to be a representative of the kingdom daily. And we do that by allowing his words to be a lamp to our feet. We are currently in the book of Genesis chapter 31 in our Bible study series, Revelation or Journey to Revelation 22. And so I'm really excited to talk about this with you guys. If you have already read the book of Genesis, I don't know why I move my hands like this. If you have already read the book of Genesis chapter 31, leave it in the comments and let me know what you think about it. I want to talk about it. I want to discuss it. But if you have not read it, I do believe that this chapter is very relatable to a lot of us, simply because in this chapter we see that Jacob has come to this point where he has been working for years. Everything keeps changing. His uncle keeps manipulating and deceiving him. And at this point, he's about 20 years into working. And I don't know about you guys, but I've worked in places where I felt overworked and underappreciated. But what this chapter is going to show us really is just what it looks like to listen to God, what it looks like to still be faithful, still be obedient to what God is saying, and making some human mistakes and just learning from them, but also how to handle it at the end of the day. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. I love that I just said that. I don't know why I just said that. So to get some context about what's going on or what's about to happen in chapter 31, I want to talk a little bit about last chapter. So in the last chapter, after Rachel had Joseph, her only biological son from Jacob, Jacob received word from God that it was time to leave that place. And so he told his uncle, and his uncle tried to persuade him not to, because he simply said, I have been blessed with you around me. And so he wants Jacob to stay. But what Jacob said is, I'm going to tend your flock, but my wages will be these certain sheep that are in your flock. The black and brown ones, the spotted ones, the striped ones, those will be mine. And so what his uncle did was his uncle took those that were supposed to be the wages of Jacob, and he gave them to his sons, and they went 3 days away. But the God that we serve, okay, the God that promised to be with Jacob and to keep him, gave him the knowledge, the creativity, the strategy, whatever it was, to create more of these type of animals, to breed these animals. And so Jacob's flock grew bigger than his uncle's. I'm not surprised, but just to give that context. So now we get into chapter 31, where Laban's sons believe that Jacob is taking all of these things, all of their father's wealth, away from him. Now, this is what you call envy, because as we know, Laban grew, his flock grew, he became fruitful the entire 20 years that Jacob was living with them, right? And now all of a sudden, when Jacob finally requests wages so that he can provide for his own family, all of a sudden Jacob is now stealing from their father. Now, envy is not a small sin. As we know from history, now and back then, envy is just the start of more and more sin. Envy will cause you to lie, it'll cause you to cheat, it'll cause you to steal, it'll cause you to kill. So you have to be very careful with that. So what Jacob does with his discernment is he recognizes that his uncle is not really messing with him like that anymore. And so it says, then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. As we know, God has a history of being faithful. He has a history of being a truth teller. And as Jacob can see, God has not lied yet, and I don't see it happening. Jacob ends up calling Rachel and Leah to the field where his flocks is and says, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me, changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. I really love this part because I'm sorry if you hear sound in the back. My husband is pressure washing, but just these verses so good because Jacob has this discernment that he no longer has favor in this area. His time is up. This is so familiar to me because like the last 2 years or so that I was in dentistry, I felt like my time was up in dentistry, and I felt convicted that the Lord was calling me out of dentistry. And sometimes it can just be challenging, and sometimes you can stick around a lot longer than you really should. And so we see here that Jacob is finally getting ready to follow through and leave. He has what he needs already, but what he sees is he sees God's part in everything good that has happened to him. So a lot of times what we do is when there's a lot of bad things going on, we start to say, oh, the enemy, oh, God is not with me, oh, this and this and this. But what Jacob does is he says, I see that I no longer have favor with Laban or y'all dad, but God has seen me through it. God was with me. God did not allow him to harm me. I've recognized that Jacob always says the God of my fathers. He doesn't say my God, like he doesn't claim God as his own, but he does recognize what God is doing in his life. And I think that that's really important, especially when you're going through things that are not comfortable, because it was never promised that we would never have trouble, but that we would have a heart that could withstand trouble. I really love that part, and this goes to show you what it looks like when you are going through hard times and you have to make a decision or anything of that nature, and you want to recognize what God has done for you, because you'll see in scripture a lot that it'll say remember, 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 recall, remember. The best way to move forward, even when you might not hear another revelation from God, or you might not hear what you want to hear, but remember what he's already told you. Remember his character. Remember what you already know, instead of looking for something new. So it says, but God did not permit him to harm me. I love that so much. If he said the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock bore spotted. And if he said the striped shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that made it with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see, all the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. This is God's provision. This is what it looks like for God to provide for you. This is what it looks like for God to give you clarity and revelation. Had Jacob not been paying attention, he might have missed it, honestly. But in the season of breeding, so in the right season, God gave Jacob information that was necessary in order to be fruitful. So in chapter 30, when Jacob said what his wages would be, it's because God revealed it to him. God spoke to him and told him this is what it's going to be. You don't want to miss the provision that God is giving you because it doesn't look like what you thought it would be. Sometimes you still got to do a little bit of work. Sometimes you still have to serve. Sometimes you still have to do what you have to do before you can reap what you've sown. I really hope that makes sense. I hope I didn't complicate that. So far what we see here is Jacob worked. He worked with integrity. He worked with faithfulness. He served well. He served 20 years. We don't like to do that. We don't like to work. We don't like to learn from experiences. We don't know how to suffer well. And I know sometimes it can be challenging, but I believe that Jacob's time in this place humbled him. Him working for his uncle humbled him enough, and it prepared him for what was to come when it was time to meet his brother. So I just think it's really, really important for us to recognize how important it is to work. A lot of times we want to skip some steps, but it's really important that we not try to outpace God and what he's doing. Jacob received conviction and a revelation that it was time for him to leave, even though he probably felt it for a long time, because it says, I served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. A lot of us not giving nobody 10 times to play with us. Let's be honest. But Jacob stuck it out. And right after that sentence was, but God. Because but God. But God did not permit him to harm me. It goes back to the other scripture of a weapon forming but not prospering. It doesn't say that the weapon will not come up against me. It just won't prosper. So don't forget that. Don't forget that you have to endure. Don't forget that you have to know how to move in situations that are uncomfortable and not ideal. Jacob did it for a long time, and it started in the beginning. His uncle tricked him into thinking that he was going to marry one daughter, but then he had to work another 7 years to marry the other daughter, and then continued to work with him. This took patience. This took integrity. This took being Christ-like. And I hope when we're reading scripture that we're looking at it in this way. We're looking at character development. We're looking at the character of God. We're looking at all of these things and trying to find ways to live it out practically. Moving on. So after Jacob said those things, Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion of inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us and he has indeed devoured our money. They no longer belong to their father. They belong to Jacob. So they're saying, is there no portion left with my father? There's nothing left. And then he devoured all that you gave him. Laban was like every lukewarm Christian or somebody who's just on the fence, where you see what God has done, right? He's seen it when Abraham's servant came to find a wife for Isaac. He's seen it the whole 20 years that Jacob worked. He's seen what God can do. He was a witness to it. He experienced it. He received from it. He reaped from it. And yet his character still never changed. So they eventually said, whatever God has said to you, do. And that's how we should always be. And when you have a spouse, that should be their response. Whatever God has said to you, do. So Jacob arose, he set his sons, his wives on camels, and he drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, and he headed towards Canaan, his father, and to his father Isaac. Laban was shearing his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household god. This always not confuses me, but it's a question that's in the back of my head, because why did she steal her father's household god? Was it to take it away from him so that he doesn't worship it anymore? Or is it because she wanted it? I'm not sure, but that's always a question in my head. I don't know. What y'all think about that? Why do you think she took her father's God? I'm so glad that I don't have to worry about my God being stolen. Who wants a God that can be stolen? But Jacob tricked his uncle by not telling him that he intended to flee. Jacob feared his uncle. And so instead of telling his uncle, okay, I got my flock, you got your flock, I'm going to go ahead and leave, this is what was agreed upon. Instead, he left while his uncle was gone. When Laban found out about it, he chased him down. Laban was not playing, because it looks like disrespect. Not saying that Laban was right or wrong, not saying that Jacob was right or wrong. And I have no ability to judge anybody anyway. But Jacob leaving without saying anything, taking all the children, the servants, the wives, all the things, and just leaving without telling Laban, he felt offended. So he pursued him. But God, because it says in verse 24, but God came to Laban in a dream by night and said to him, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now that's the ESV version or translation. The NLT translation says, I am warning you, leave Jacob alone. So it is always a but God. There should always be a but God in your vocabulary, because it ain't nobody but God who will protect you even when you don't deserve it, who will keep you even when you don't deserve it, who will be with you even when you're not obedient, even when you don't do things the right way. But God. He is the only God I know who cannot be stolen, who will love you with unwavering love, faithfulness, grace, and mercy. It doesn't get any better. And so Laban caught up to Jacob eventually. And so he says, what have you done that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs and tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And now you have gone away because you long greatly for your father's house, but why did you steal my gods? This is so funny to me, because I don't believe that Laban would have celebrated Jacob leaving, but I don't know. Neither does Jacob. But for him to say all of that and then switch up in the same breath and say, it is in my power to do you harm. No, it's not. Because your next sentence was, but the God of your father spoke to me. So no, it was not. No, it was not in your power. Because the God that I serve will not allow you to harm me. You pursued me all this way and could not touch me because the God that I serve. I might not have done it the way that you wanted me to do it, but the God that I serve will protect me nonetheless, because he rebuked you. Because though I may have left secretly, you mistreated me, you did not respect me, you changed my wages, you were a horrible host for 20 years. So yes, I fled secretly, but look at what you did. But then when he says, but why did you steal my God? Sir, all of this because his gods was stolen. A God that can be stolen, I can't imagine. And so Jacob answered Laban and said, because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Valid, I understand, but fear have you doing the opposite of what God told you to do. And what it said, I think it was 1 Timothy or 2 Timothy, is God did not give us a spirit of fear. And I know sometimes that's hard to remember. And so sometimes I just repeat that in my head, because it's easy to fear. Fear failure, fear rejection, fear a lot of things. And so sometimes you got to do it scared. And sometimes just those words, God did not give me a spirit of fear, but of love and power and confidence. So though my flesh may be scared, though I am uncomfortable with the unknown, I'm going to do it anyway. Once Laban searched and did not find the gods, the household gods, Jacob became angry at this point, because now he's like, okay, now that you haven't found nothing, it's an epiphany right now. No, wait a minute. You done chased me down. You done accused me of some things. And the whole time you mistreated me. So Jacob about to run him down. So let's talk about it. So he says, what is my sins that you have pursued me? For you have felt through all of my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your female goats, they have not miscarried. I have not eaten the rams of your flock. What has been torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was by the day, the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you for 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. He read him for filth. I don't care what nobody say. And I don't want anybody to get this confused by Jacob defending himself by saying arrogance and all the things. Jacob was absolutely right. You mistreated me all of this time. I served you faithfully. I did things that I wasn't even expected to do. I was reading commentary from Enduring Word, and what it said about the beast was, it was an ancient custom that a shepherd could bring the torn carcass of a sheep to his owner as evidence that he was brave enough to not let the wolf devour it or take it away, and thus the shepherd would be excused. Jacob explained that he didn't follow this custom, and every animal that was attacked or stolen he replaced out of his own herd. Jacob had integrity. He served well. He took care of the sheep. He took it serious. He took his job serious. He didn't slack off on the job. He didn't eat. He didn't feel entitled to eat from his flock. He went the extra mile, which is what we are called to do. So Jacob is like, I did all of this for you, and yet you are accusing me of something with no proof. But it also reminds us again of God's character, that God sees it all. Now, some of the discomfort can be used for our good and molding us and stretching us and pruning us and preparing us for the next thing, which we do have to understand. But God is not going to allow the enemy to prosper over us, to pluck us out of his hand. God is not going to allow that, which is why he said for us not to fear man. So Jacob had every right to defend himself. And then he said, God saw my affliction and labored my hands and rebuked you last night, and did. And so Laban answered and said to him, the daughters are my daughters and the children are my children, the flock are my flock, and all that you see is mine. Huh? At this point, Laban is delusional, but okay. But what can I do this day for these my daughters, or for their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, let it be a witness between you and me. And so now they make this covenant, this vow, this truce. And it's not a very friendly truce, because they call it, well, one of them calls it Mizpah, which is pretty much, if you cross this line, or whoever crossed this line, is shoot to kill. Like, don't play with me. God is the witness. God gonna have to save you if you cross this line, type of thing. So it wasn't a friendly one, but it was just like, it is what it is. This is the last time we heard about their dad. He had no more to offer. He did not learn. He did not grow. He was the same man, probably still deceiving and manipulating and all the things. You've devoured all of the money. You was a witness to God for 20 years plus, and yet you still did not change. You still did not turn towards him. You decided to be an idol worshiper. You decided to continue the way that you are. This is the aftermath of working for somebody for a long time, showing up, doing your best, being faithful, being loyal, moving with integrity. And a lot of times we can feel like it was not worth it. We can feel like there was no reason for all of this hard work that I did. I'm unappreciated. I'm underpaid. What is this for? And you're angry with God because you don't feel like the results are resulting. You don't feel like God is with you. But these are things where sometimes you might not see what he's doing, but he is moving. But also, your character development matters. What you do matter. Are you Christ-like? When you're working on a job, or when you're serving on a committee or on a board, when you're doing something, when you're working, when you are, whatever it is that you do, are you doing it to the best of your ability? Or are you doing the bare minimum? Are you doing the silent quitting? Are you just skating by? What are you doing? Because what Jacob did was he worked hard. He took care of those flocks like it was his own. You heard what he said. By day it was hot, by night it was cold. His life was flashing before his eyes, but he was still doing it. Now, this is not to say to stay in a place that you're not respected. This is where your discernment comes into play. This is where your relationship with God comes into play, because you want to have a relationship with him so that you are aware of when he's telling you to leave a place. When he told me to leave dentistry, or when I felt convicted, when I felt like my time was up, there was no more to learn, there was no more to do, it was pointless at that point. I still showed up. Every dental office I stepped foot in for those last couple of years, I showed up, I did my best. I treated every patient like they were the only patient in the world while I was with them. My team members, the dentist, everybody. Even though I felt like I was checked out mentally, I showed up intentionally every single time. Y'all need my chapstick, hold on. I didn't allow my lack of confirmation or reassurance or anything like that stop me from still showing up as my best self. And I think that's where a lot of people slack at, or where a lot of people go wrong at, because you feel like you no longer have to be your best self based off of what somebody else is doing. Now, I will say, I did not tolerate disrespect, but I also did not disrespect. First of all, I treated people how I wanted to be treated, which was with respect. And so anytime I had to have a confrontation with somebody, first of all, I did it respectfully. I did it discreetly and made sure that before we ended that conversation, there was an understanding. And again, I think that's where a lot of people mess up, because a lot of people struggle with communication. You got to know how to communicate well. And when you are not emotionally intelligent to where you can't regulate your emotions when you're frustrated, you need to step away then. You don't need to communicate with anybody when you're frustrated. You need to wait till you cool down a little bit. But see me, and I will not lie, I have a history of having an attitude problem, which is why it took a lot of time and a lot of effort for me to get to this point. But it wasn't nobody but God. So I know that if I sit on it too long, it ain't gonna be pretty. So what I have to do is, whenever I get a moment where we're both free, come talk to me, please. Because sometimes, and I'm still working on it, it's either hot or cold. There is no in between. There is no faking. We're either good or we're not, and I never want to be, or wrong way. We're either good or we're not, and I never want to be to the point where we're not. Because when we're not good, you no longer exist to me. And Lord, please help me with that. Because cold shoulder, you don't exist. I'm walking right past you. I don't even see you. And it's never like disrespectful to where like you're talking to me and I ignore you. But there's no emotion there. There's no small talk. There's no giggling. Ask me the question you need to ask me. I'm going to answer it, and that's that on that. There's no more, no less. No more, no less. But I never want to get to that point. And if I sit on it, I get to that point. To where now I'm like, okay, we don't even got to talk about it no more, because I'm here now. So anything that you say will not matter to me. And it's not hate. It's usually just me deciding to choose my peace, but I don't want to do it that way. I still want to be able to get it off of my chest. We communicate that way. There's no guesswork. There is no assumption. This is how I feel, and I want to give you the ability to explain how you feel and what you received from it, or why you did this thing that offended me. Saying all of this to say, it takes character development. It takes effort. It takes effort to show up as your best self, even when you're in a place that is annoying as heck. It takes character development to be your best self so that you can have those conversations with people who you might not feel is deserving of a conversation with you. But you got to know how to communicate. You got to know how to communicate with people who you can't stand. Not in a friendly way, but in a way to where there's an understanding and there's no resentment and there's no grudges being held. There's no unforgiveness in your heart, because unforgiveness is a sin. So if I can't hold a grudge against you, I need to figure out how to talk to you so that I can get this off of my chest. You can get whatever you need off your chest. I can forgive you and we can move on. So what Jacob showed us in this chapter is he did that. It might not show every single detail, but from his read, when he read his uncle, it's 20 years. 20 years I served you well with all my strength. Even though you changed my wages 10 times. You abused me and you would have left me empty-handed if God was not on my side. Meaning he knew the character of his uncle. He knew it in the beginning when his uncle tricked him the first time. But yet he still showed up. I know I rambled a little bit, but all of that to say, like, this is real life. This is how you react to things. This is how you respond to things. And knowing God is knowing his voice, is having discernment, is knowing when it's time for you to leave a place. When Jacob told his uncle that he wanted to leave in chapter 30, God had already spoken to him about it, which is why he decided it was time to leave. Now, sometimes God wants you to stay a little bit longer for some more character development. It's never fun, but hey, sometimes there is no plan. Sometimes he just tells you to leave. And sometimes when you're not ready to leave just yet, sometimes if you're still there, you work hard, but you plan. You make a plan that is involved, that God is involved in, but you plan. But anyway, that's it. That's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And also, if you've read this chapter, let me know what you thought about it. Let me know what you thought about Jacob's character in this chapter, along with his uncle's character in this chapter. And I also still want to know, why did Rachel steal that household god? Because it doesn't say if she disposed of it or anything. So what did she do with it? Was she worshiping it? I don't know. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in so much. Or no. Thank you guys so much for tuning into another Bible study with me. I really appreciate all the support. I really appreciate all the subscriptions, the likes. I just pray that you guys receive something from this. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Let me know. And yeah, that's it. All right. Bye. Mwah.